The good, the bad, and the ugly from this Blazers season. 503-864-6326. I want to hear from Blazer fans, kind of get inventory on where everybody's at, because look, as the season wraps up and we get to the end of it, and you look at 40 games under 500, which I don't know why they say 40 games under 500, but because it was only 20 games under 500.
Yeah, it's always
41 and 41 is 500. They were only 20 games behind them.
Yeah, just don't make no sense.
Yeah, but at the same time, we knew that this was going to be the lot that the Blazers were in. And the reality is that 21 losses, is that all that different than 31 or 21 wins? Is that all that different than 31 wins that the Utah Jazz had? No, because in this portion of the rebuild, and we talked about this at the beginning of the year when we were consistent with it, like 28 being that over-under win total, that was like the ceiling for where this roster was and what the goal was throughout the course of this year. They were young. They were inexperienced. We saw the flurry of moves that happened before the season even started. That led them to this point, and you were breaking in a rookie point guard in Scoot Henderson. And I think as we take a look at what they were, is their lack of competitiveness this season, it's frustrating as a fan to sit there and go through it night in and night out. And look, I commend Kevin Calabro, Lamar Hurd, and Brooke Olzendam for putting on an entertaining product, even in those stretches where you knew that they were not going to win. There was nothing to play for. And it was bleak, man, especially with the injury bug kind of hitting this team too. And I think if you look at the bad from this season, the injuries are definitely, almost tops on the list, especially Shaedon Sharpe.
Mm-hmm.
The injury to Shaedon Sharpe, that kind of derailed the growth and momentum that he could have been gaining at 32 games. You sat there and you said you started to see those sparks and turning into that player that people had hoped he could become. He has to go and get that abdominal surgery. That was just a big downer for this team. Scoot Henderson, where he started to look a little bit comfortable, he gets hurt, and then he has to kind of start over again. I think the last 20 games of the season, Scoot was good. I mean, Scoot showed...
At the very least, he had showed improvement.
A lot more comfort and a lot more of that burst and that pop that we thought he would get.
Right.
There are still miles to go in Scoot Henderson's development.
Yes.
And this is not to say that, like, he in 20 games changed my mind one way or the other on him. The verdict is still out on what he can do, because in the end, this era of the NBA, you have to be able to shoot. And we started to see that little bit of a creator, that little bit of that kind of pit bull on the defensive end starting to show, even though it's not there yet, right? And it's not complete. Nothing is complete with his game. You started to see growth and development. And then, heck, the last couple of nights, he was actually shooting threes. Not too shabby. But you're going to need to see a shooter. Anthony Simons, I think there's a lot TBD there. Because that was the big one, is that now that Dame is gone, he is the leader of this franchise. And Danny may disagree with me when he gets in here, but this is one of the things that you sit there and you look at with this Trailblazers team is, I don't think that Anthony Simons is that dog that can pull you to wins.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that you need. That is a massive void that this team has. I'll say DeAndre Ayton was a bright spot.
Yeah.
Jeremy Grant's injuries were... And look, D.A., he had that roller coaster of the injury bug too. Jeremy Grant's injuries were a major concern, and moving forward, you're looking at, all right, or Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons going to be in the fold and in the future of what Portland is doing and trying to build towards.
Yeah, and I think for me, the frustrating part about Simons is that next year will be year 7.
Yeah.
And we still don't know.
Yeah.
We still don't know. 6+ years in, and we still don't know.
No.
And the worst part is that even after next year, even outside of Simons, what have we learned about Chauncey Billups as a coach because of roller coaster seasons like this and injuries and guys in and out of the lineups. And we still don't, 3 years into that, we still don't know what kind of coach Chauncey Billups is.
I thought that what we saw from a lot of role players, like the one thing that Danny has been preaching, and we saw it, the draft and development, the Tumani Kamara trade knocked it out of the park. We saw at the end of the year, Ryan Rupert and his comfortability in shooting the ball and developing that stroke.
Yeah.
He has the potential to be a very fine role player. Chris Murray, also, you saw great spurts out of Chris Murray of being a role player. They got the role players dialed in. And look, this team is not far off from being able to compete night in and night out. To compete for a title is a completely different story and completely a different orbit that this organization is dealing with right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you sit there and as bad as it was, as much as people don't want to acknowledge it or admit it, because 21-61 is a tough one to stare down. There was development in a lot of areas for this team. It shouldn't sit well with people that, I mean, in reality, this is they're going to be entering year 3 of a complete rebuild, but it's year 5 of non-competitive basketball. That sucks.
Yeah.
Especially for a fan base, a city that is used to being competitive.
Yeah.
And look, Neil O'Shea built a roster that was able to compete and be a playoff team year in and year out. And he did, like, as much as we want to criticize Neil O'Shea for all the rightful reasons that we do criticize Neil O'Shea, he did build a competitive roster and did a really good job at that. He also, like, Chad Buchanan did the legwork on Dame. Like, it wasn't like he drafted Dame and found this diamond in the rough. That legwork had already been done. But then that was the centerpiece, the focal point of this organization. What he did was he was able to put a lot of pieces that made a competitive team, a playoff team, a top 4 seed in the Western Conference a few times, but made them competitive. I think that this team is lacking star power, obviously.
Yeah.
But you're starting to see the draft development of guys. It was working. Their eye for guys like Duop Reith, who's not a starting big in the NBA.
No.
But finding those guys that can fill a role in down the line type roster building.
Yeah.
The bones are there, but the biggest pieces are missing.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it still doesn't feel like you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You wonder how far off that still is. And also, as much as O'Shea did, air quotes, succeed in building a competitive roster, look, we're a couple of years removed from him, but he's still a lot of the reason why the Blazers are at where they're at right now. You know, and it's hard seeing the light at the end of the tunnel because not only does it not feel like we have a 1 on the current roster, I'm not sure that we have a 2 on the current roster. Because is on a good team, is Jeremy Grant going to be your second best player?
No, Anthony Simons could be,
or like DeAndre Ayton,
but they're missing a 1 and a bona fide 2. Yeah.
Yes,
and that's the thing is, do you start pushing reset? And DeAndre Ayton, when he plays like we saw, when he turns it on,
he's got some flashes, man.
100% he can be.
Yeah.
He can be that guy that you're talking about.
But if he can do that, but he needs to be able to do that night in and night out, and he hasn't been able to prove that yet.
No doubt about it. I mean, and that's where we are. I want to know where Blazer fans are. 503-864-6326. That'd be the Vancouver Ford text line. They are miles away from where they want to be. This offseason is massive. It is.
Yeah.
Because they untangled the mess from O'Shea. They have put themselves with a couple of tradable contracts, whether that is Malcolm Brogdon on an expiring deal, whether that is a team looking for a guy like Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons to go and make some bigger swings. And now, if the lottery ball goes your way later this week, and you get the third best odds for the lottery come May 12th, all of a sudden, if you win the lottery, like this is like a top 2 kind of draft right now.
Yeah, it's not.
You get
not a great draft.
You're hoping on lottery balls, and then we find a direction, and big changes can be made. There's attractive players, role players, down the line players.
You're not getting your superstar here.
Not on this roster.
No,
not right.
Well,
now.
Not in this draft.
And I think that was one of the ones that, when there's been like this selling of hope that maybe Ant turns the corner, maybe it, and we've seen what you've mentioned. What, 7 years now?
Yeah, he just finished his 6th season.
He is very young.
Yeah,
and he is a really damn good
24
player.
Still?
Yeah, I think he is 24 years old. He's a really damn good player. But look at every other team that is competitive, that is a playoff competitive team. They are leaps and bounds above any caliber of player that we look at with the Portland Trailblazers. You could just go down the line, whether it's Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson, Giannis. You can go to Darius Garland in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, they've got a good young core.
Yes,
in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
So does Orlando. They need shooters.
Isn't
still.
it weird to say the words something along the lines of that the Cavaliers have done it right and well?
Oh, they have. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. You've got Joel Embiid, obviously. Jimmy Butler in Miami. Then you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder with SGA and Chet. Jokic and Jamal Murray in Denver. You got Karl Anthony Towns and Ant Edwards in Minnesota. You've got the trio that is older than sin, but you have Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Russell Westbrook in LA with the Clippers. Luka and Kyrie in Dallas. KD, Book, and Beal, when healthy, in Phoenix. Every single one of these teams that is competitive, that is a playoff team, leaps and bounds. Their number one is miles ahead of where Portland is. They're number two. We mentioned a lot of number twos on these teams that are miles ahead of where Portland is.
Yeah.
And that is the point, and that's the crapshoot. And that's the hardest part. And look, that's where there's a lot of pessimism, and I understand it because those guys are very hard to find.
Yeah.